A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for the Cyber Warriors Conclave. Today, we'll be hearing from multiple C-suite and senior executives who are responsible for protecting their company's critical infrastructure, and they will be joined by industry-leading solution providers who support them. We will learn from these experts on how to protect and defend our businesses from cyber attacks during the various interactive panels and fast-track discussions. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our partners and sponsors, Aruba Networks, Network Perception, FireEye Mandiant, and Veeam Software for their support. The conclave will kick off with a case study presentation on how to visualize OT network security by Network Perception, followed by another showcase on redefining the edge of the oil and gas industry by Aruba Networks. This will be followed by our first panel discussion of the day on the pursuit of security with panelists from one of Qatar's leading petrochemical companies, NG, Petrofac, Network Perception, and ENY. Our first panel in this section will be on the convergence between IT and OT with panelists from one of Qatar's leading chemical companies, Suez, ENY, and one of Dubai's leading oil companies. I'd like to now hand it over to Mr. Robin Berthier, who's the CEO of Network Perception. Robin, I believe it's 1 a.m. where you are now. Thank you for taking the time and the effort to participate this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Let me see if I can share my screen. All right. I believe you can see my computer here.
Yeah, it's clear.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending this event. I'm going to present on a topic that's really important nowadays around visualization, but not any visualization, the one that's concerning the industrial control systems like OT network security. So in terms of our agenda for today, I'll give a short overview of the current threat landscape, what's changing this year in terms of threats and the impact on the energy sector and critical infrastructure. I'll present also a path to cyber resiliency, and then I'll focus on a case study around the concept of visibility, not any visibility, the one that's related to architecture and network devices. So my name is Robin Berthier. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Network Perception. At NP, we are designing and implementing software solutions for protecting mission-critical assets. And we've been a partner with the compliance industry and the energy industry in the US and around the world. So no need to go very far to understand that this year has been quite special in terms of increasing cyber threats. We see two major trends going on, one on the side of ransomware. The number of attacks jumps by more than 300% since 2018. And surprisingly, the energy sector is becoming one of the prime targets next to healthcare regarding those ransomware attacks. The other trend has been the rise of more sophisticated attacks with supply chain, such as the SolarWinds attack last December. And those are extremely concerning because they are putting into question the trust we have with our software vendors, and the fact that this trust allowed the software vendors to have access to a lot of critical assets in organizations mean that we need to now really think through defense in depth and how to compartmentalize our security solutions. So why are critical assets targeted that we call crown jewels? The attackers, of course, discovered that businesses that depend on cyber systems will have to shut down operations when their mission critical assets are breached. And that was the case with Colonial Pipeline just a few months ago. And so those cyber threats are increasingly targeting those critical assets because they know that they have the most severe impact on uptime and revenue. And so in the case of a ransomware, that's just increasing your probability to get the ransom paid. Also, in the energy system and energy sector and many critical infrastructure, a lot of legacy equipment and also equipment that is geographically dispersed, which mean harder to defend and harder to visualize. And we're observing that reactive approaches, such as purely investing in terms of detection, is now too slow for the level of sophistication that we are seeing in cyber threats. So the important part to understand is that organizations have to invest in a resiliency solution, because it's not an if they're going to get attacked, it's more like a when. And so that means that the operational uptime relies on their ability to adapt and recover faster. So assessing cybersecurity baseline in near real time, being able to accelerate their risk mitigation efforts, as well as I said earlier, like investing in defense in depth and having multiple layers to protect our critical assets. So at Network Perception, we are developing software, and we define a path to guide our users to achieve that vision of cyber resiliency. And so we've identified 3 major steps. Number 1, to start with the verification of our internal controls and our compliance frameworks. Number 2, to achieve visibility over our cybersecurity, making sure we understand what risk we have. We can understand the context around those risks and the exposure of our different assets. And then number 3, once we have the verification and visibility pieces in place, to be able to gain velocity, which means to move from a snapshot review of our security posture to a more continuous verification and visualization of risk and assets. So today I really want to focus on step 2, which is the visibility, and in the context of OT networks. So why investing in visibility? Where the first aspect is really knowing your network. It's well known that if you don't know well your network, then you won't be able to defend it precisely. So an important part there is to know which assets are connected, which traffic is routed to the different devices you have, what's the scope or the attack surface that you have in terms of critical assets to defend. The second aspect is to eliminate the blind spots, and organizations are really prone to have a lot of changes in their network environment, which leaves potential risks in terms of not being able to see what's going on. And the attackers, of course, have the time to investigate that much further than the defenders. So visibility is a solution to really eliminate those blind spots and understanding exhaustively this attack surface. And then the third aspect is to make informed decision. And that's a concept of visibility which is important, is to be able to aggregate information in different abstraction level. And that means that we need to understand at a detailed, low-level aspect how our security is being deployed and controlled, as well as also understanding the big picture, like in terms of policy, in terms of accesses at the business unit or organization level. We want to make those informed decisions, and visibility is a great way to achieve that aggregation that we need to have. What's in scope of network visibility? 3 buckets. Number 1, the activity of endpoints across the network. So that will be your protocol, network protocol identifications, DNP3, Modbus, like all the activity going on in both the OT and the IT network. And the question there is to make sure that those communications are legitimate. The second aspect, which is very complementary to the first one, is to be able to visualize your architecture. And that means like how your network devices are enforcing the segmentation of your network into different zones, and that those zones are correctly controlled. And then the third aspect of visualization will be the threats and the vulnerabilities. And that may require you to look outside of your own network to understand what are the trends in terms of attacks outside, and also what are the vulnerabilities in your asset that could be exploited. So OT environment have specific challenges. Number one, you have a lot of legacy equipment, and that means that some of this equipment will not support installing agents for monitoring the activity. So in terms of that first bucket I mentioned in the previous slide, for the endpoint activity, the presence of legacy equipment hinder that deployment. The second aspect is the fact that you have equipment that are geographically dispersed. A large volume of assets is really increasing the cost of deploying, monitoring, and visualization solutions. And then third, also linked to this concept of legacy equipment, that a lot of those assets are outside of the scope of your typical IT scanning activities. The OT environment have really strict requirement around guaranteed availability. So you cannot have a network scanner reducing that network bandwidth or availability for a period of time. And also some of this equipment is not designed to respond in a correct way to those scan probes. And that means that you could actually break or negatively affect an asset by simply sending a malformed packet like a scanner would do. So at Network Perception, we've developed technology to help address those challenges. And so I'd like to show you a short case study. I took the example of a power transmission operator that has a high impact cyber system to protect. And the goal of the cybersecurity office is to gain visibility over their OT network environment in order to better defend it. So we've developed a process in 3 major steps. Number one, to collect raw data from the network, and that will help us to address the need of network architecture visibility. The second is to be able to generate a topology diagram. And so for this, we can use automated technologies such as NPLI that we have developed at Network Perception, but other software are available as well. Using this topology map to understand what are the different zones, which asset do we have to protect, what are their criticality, and adding a layer of vulnerability information in order to understand the context around potential exploits, and also the possible mitigation effort that we can have through firewalls or zoning. And then third, to be able to document the gaps that we have in terms of our cybersecurity. And that's where the visibility is crucial, because you can see and you can understand the context across your environment, and that means you can really document precisely where are the gaps and how to address them with a plan. So we start with the collection of raw data. So pretty basic network, 2 sides, IT and OT, firewalls in between. We also have network devices inside our OT network. We'll collect 3 types of data. We'll collect config files from our firewalls, routers, and managed layer 3 switches. We'll also collect ARP tables from our switches that will give us an accurate picture of the different devices connected. And then, if possible, we'll collect vulnerability reports. So as I mentioned, in an OT environment, scanning to collect vulnerability may not be possible, but nowadays you have solutions to be able to passively monitor the traffic and collect at least fingerprint assets, and then potentially collect vulnerability information from those passive monitoring. Once we have those files, we can import them into a platform like NPLI. I'm showing here a screenshot that was directly extracted from the platform. We just simply dump the files collected for that environment, and it automatically generated this map. We have the outside zone on the left, which is either access to the internet or to the larger corporate network. We have an IT environment. We see a firewall here that separate the outside from the IT zone. /24, a network with multiple assets connected. We have a DMZ with 2 interfaces and then 3 assets. Firewall protecting the OT environment from the rest of the network with another interface /24 and a multiple set of assets. And those assets are the one controlling equipment for our power transmission operator. So that's step 1, really importing the files, being able to visualize and have a good understanding of the different zones in our network, how they are segmented, and what assets do we have. When you import only the firewall configuration, you may only see the interface information, and that's why you also want to import the app tables in order to get the detailed view of all your connected assets. The second aspect is to be able to label the criticality of the assets. And so as you can see in this map, we have different highlights for different nodes. We have yellow for low criticality, orange for medium, and red for high criticality. So that helps in terms of visualization, because now we can see our crown jewels are on the right, and then we need to prioritize them in our effort to deploy access policies. The third aspect is to import vulnerability information. So you may have different sources of vulnerabilities for your assets, either through agents that are directly installed on those assets, or as I said earlier, through passive monitoring, or in the case of an IT environment, through active scanning. And what's important here is that to combine the vulnerability information with the network architecture, because this will help you to understand if a vulnerability has layers of protection to mitigate access from the outside or from a different network zone. So for example, we see here we have an Active Directory vulnerability, CVE 2013-1282. And then the next step is to understand, okay, do we have Active Directory traffic available through that firewall and maybe through even that firewall, or is everything blocked and restricted in that OT environment, that way no one can actually exploit this unless it's physically connected to that /24. And that those answers can be achieved through a path analysis. And so path analysis is when we can model the network. We can model how each firewall is behaving in terms of permitting or denying traffic. And what you can see here on this example is that we selected a target, or Active Directory server there on the top right corner. And the map revealed every node that can connect directly to this target in red. So we see we have 2 nodes in the DMZ that can directly connect to that Active Directory server. And then in orange, the one that will be 1 stepping stone away. So that means that if an attacker were to compromise an orange node, they would also have to compromise a red node before being able to reach that target. So this network path analysis combined with the architecture and the vulnerability information allows us to do different attack scenarios. So we can see a possible scenario where an intruder from the outside zone is able to compromise the first Active Directory server with the same vulnerability, use that as a jumping station to get into the DMZ. And then because there's a flow that's available from the DMZ directly to that AD server, exploit that communication flow and the vulnerability in the second AD server to compromise the OT environment. So once we have that scenario clearly understood, and we can explore multiple ones, and this type of visualization on what we call a stepping stone access map allows us to save a lot of time actually computing those different attack paths. We need to document our different cybersecurity gaps. And for this step 3 here, I recommend 2 aspects. So the second one here, the exposure of your vulnerability and the attack scenarios, is the topology map with the stepping stone visualization that I was just showing. And then in terms of documenting, putting potential gaps into your network segmentation, you can use what's called a connectivity matrix. So again, that can be automatically generated by a software like NP Live, where once you have the path analysis done, you can see from every pair of interface, like going from DMZ to a zone called ESP, which ports and services are available. And so that information is extremely important, because then comparing this table, this matrix against your list of vulnerability will allow you to understand what needs to be patched first, like how to prioritize your patching campaign, or what could be delayed because you have the right access control in place to prevent exploit of a known vulnerability. So in terms of key takeaways, as we can see through our threat landscape, critical infrastructure are increasingly being targeted due to their the impact on the revenue of organizations that depend on those cyber systems. It's really important to invest in concept of resiliency to be able to adapt and recover faster from those sophisticated attacks. We've developed a three-step process to achieve that cyber resiliency, starting with the verification and then following with gaining visibility, and then accelerating the risk mitigation effort through velocity. And then in terms of that step 2, visibility, collecting raw config files from your network devices will allow you to not only have access to your architecture understanding, like how is the network segmented into zones, but also being able to put in context the assets you have, their vulnerability, and then the path that will allow you to document different attack scenarios and what should be your plan to improve your defense in depth and the protection of your critical assets. So with this, I'll be happy to answer any question you may have, or you can also contact me at info@network-perception.com, and then I can follow up with you.
Thank you, Robin. This proves that cybersecurity never sleeps.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us this morning at 1.
You're very welcome.
Don't think we have any questions come in. If you can put your contact information once again on the screen, if delegates have any questions, they can reach out to you.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Moving on to our next panel, to our next case study, redefining the edge of the oil and gas industry by Fahmi Shakal, who's the pre-sales lead at Aruba Networks. Fahmi?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Fahmi can hear you. Can't see you though.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen and camera. Can you see both now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session from Aruba Networks, a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company, on redefining the edge of the oil and gas industry as part of the energy sector. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to start off with one of our examples from the industrial sector that's related more or less to the energy, oil and gas sectors. And this is one of our customers. It's called Texmark, who are involved in chemical manufacturing. And this is where Aruba has helped save Texmark around $1 million+ of inspection costs, or what was equivalent to 35,000 man-hours a year, with people involved in investigating health and safety, quality assurance, quality control across miles and miles of pipes and more than 130 pumps in their manufacturing process and chemical plant. And that's where Texmark had created a digital twin for their environment, assisted by connecting the edge, which is the access network layer, both on IT and the OT levels, through Aruba gear, through Aruba ruggedized access points, switching, integrating with our partners' sensors as well, which connect back through Aruba gear, to be able to reduce all of these costs and overhead so that we can monitor everything from a single pane of glass management sitting from the office and look at the overall plant or the infrastructure from the office instead of going on site. Now, that's what we enabled Texmark to do, but what have we done also for our other customers? And today I'm here to talk about one of our biggest oil and gas customer reference in the region. Of course, you will find Aruba in the biggest names in Qatar, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, along with other countries in the lower Gulf, including Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, and we have lots of presence overall in the Middle East and South Africa region as well. Now, we'll talk about this customer, why they chose Aruba, and what's next for this customer and all other customers in the energy sector in general. So, the trend today is to look at outcomes and how the business is looking to outcome-based applications, whether it's optimizing processes to minimize cost, to do more for less, whether it's utilizing data lakes for machine learning, for enhancing machine learning, both supervised and unsupervised, and coming with better models for artificial intelligence to automate and, again, optimize processes. How do we simulate and create digital twins for plants and infrastructures? How do we measure and manage and maintain the integrity of data? How do we connect customers and services and workers, blue-collar workers, most importantly over here? And how do you assist in sensing and diagnosing, whether it's processes, whether it's monitoring one part of the manufacturing process or the stage that the industry has to go through on-site, whether it's on-site or in the office. So all of these are the trends and the outcomes that we see our customers are looking for, and that's where we helped our customer integrate Aruba at the edge for the best of breed environment that they have. So today we realize that oil and gas customers are already established customers. They're not considered as greenfield deployments, so they are a brownfield deployment. You would expect big organizations to have already invested in multiple access network solutions, multiple security perimeter solutions, multi-factor authentication, mobile device management, health and security and safety. So all of these solutions are already sitting there, and you need a vendor that fits as the perfect piece of the puzzle inside this overall picture, and that would give you the best out of their existing investment, not only in the investment on the new gear, on a new access point or a new switch, but how do we optimize and monetize the existing and the previous investments so that we can bring the total cost of ownership down, protect their investment, and give them a higher return on the investment. The easy installation results in a rapid rollout. So again, for this customer, we're not talking about the minefield yet. We do have minefield, we do have oil and gas, we do have water extraction, we do have gas liquefaction processes, and multiple processes spread across the different operating companies of this company. But we're looking at a simple deployment, which was the head office, the headquarter, or the enterprise deployment aspect of the oil and gas, bearing in mind that we do have our deployments with ruggedized access points, explosion-proof access points, and other use cases in multiple of the operating companies. But this was phase one. Phase one was starting with the head office across tens of floors, extending to 1,000+ access points in multiple applications, not only an access point on a wall or on a ceiling. I'll explain more about that. But the ease of the rollout with the help of our partners, specifically our global services through HPE's Point Next arm, as well as our high-touch service teams in Aruba, helped throughout the planning, which is 90% of the job, and then through the deployment and rolling out floor after floor without scheduling lots of downtime, with a smooth process in migrating this customer's edge network from the previous vendor onto Aruba's gear. And last and foremost is the clear roadmap ensuring innovation. So when we talk in integrating with best of breed and protection on investment, we want Aruba as a vendor to provide for our customers a future-looking, a forward-looking plan for how do we get the best out of refreshing the edge? How do we get more use cases? And that's where we covered cases such as integrating with a visitor management system, guest management system, meeting room booking systems, spreading out the edge into use cases such as social distancing, thermal screening, facial recognition for detecting face masks, and so on. So from the edge perspective, the technology was ready to do that, and they're still looking and tapping into what could be capitalized on top of their investment into some other use cases that would be helpful for them, both in the office and on-site. Now, to give you some examples, so this is just a subset of our portfolio for what we have in our Wi-Fi offering. So that's just on the outdoor and ruggedized access points. And you would expect in a head office or an enterprise environment that you'll find those nice looking Wi-Fi APs. Well, I've got news for you. So our outdoor APs are also nice looking, but you still have special applications in a tower, in an enterprise tower, where you would want user coverage, you would want ruggedized coverage inside the parking areas. So they have a big workforce, they have covered parking areas. The user experience starts from the moment you park your car and you step out of it. You're connected and you're ready. You are already optimizing the productivity of your employees until they reach their office. And they use the process of securely, physically going into the premises of the office over their mobile application that connects over Wi-Fi. We do have outdoor application coverage for the helipad. We do have point-to-point Wi-Fi coverage in the elevator shaft that extends across more than 100 meter plus. So I cannot give details or else the customer will be clearly known, but Wi-Fi coverage was required to be pervasive. So starting from the parking all the way to the office, passing through VIP areas such as the helipad, landing area such as the briefing center, even inside the elevator, you expect Wi-Fi coverage to be available. Now, this does not stop here, and this is where, with the operating companies, now we already had some deployments, and we are deploying other locations where we have explosion-proof access points, so Zone 2 certified explosion-proof access points for hazardous areas, and for extremely hazardous areas or with higher rating for explosions, we do integrate, or we put our access points with enclosures offered by our partners such as Analing and Extronics, where you would find stainless steel or aluminum or ruggedized covers that would make our access points eligible to be installed in those hazardous areas. Now, again, that's only one point to touch on. The other point, besides connectivity, was security. So today, on the edge, forget about IoT, forget about OT, you want to connect users, you want to secure them. And that's where ClearPass comes in with the multitude of tools that are available out of the box. Now, we started out with securing wireless users. We ended up with involving ClearPass for securing the management of the whole network. So it was not only Aruba, but as I said, the best of breed deployment. So TechX Plus was used for managing multiple firewalls, multiple switching solutions that already have existing. And that's where today we're taking the same solution, we're scaling it up to extend to the operating company so that it could be used in the offices and on sites, not only for securing users, but for securing users, for securing endpoints, for securing IoT, and also for securing and providing visibility on OT, because that's where the blur starts when you cross from the office and to become on-site. Now, ClearPass, because it's a best-of-breed solution, it's one of the biggest differentiators of Aruba in sitting in a multi-vendor environment where we can sit on top of any underlying infrastructure, from a network perspective, from a security perspective, integrate with multi-factor authentication, mobile device management, logging solutions, and that's where this customer started realizing the value. They invested in ClearPass thinking it will only secure the Aruba Wi-Fi traffic, whereas they looked and they saw so many logos of the already invested vendors they had in the environment, and they started building on a context which helped build the zero trust security that was adaptable. So more context was being pulled both ways from those solutions onto ClearPass and from ClearPass onto these solutions, so that they came up with better optimized workflows to lock down the security on their users and their devices. And not only that, it extends, as we said, and as we've been hearing, to other layers of security where we're looking into industrial IoT and OT. And this is where visibility matters the most, where we need to understand what's connected on the edge. And the edge is not just defined by the access or the Wi-Fi, the switches or the Wi-Fi access point, but it goes beyond that to the ruggedized gear, to the operational technology protocols that are coming from the rigs and from the mining fields and from the different sites that this oil and gas company has. Now, provided we have this combination, these are the use cases that they already had capitalized on. So this is where you can start building outcomes for your employees, for your white-collar workers, for your blue-collar workers, based on the infrastructure that we put in, just from a Wi-Fi perspective, just from ClearPass, and just by embedding the location services that we have as standalone or built into the APs, both indoor and outdoor, to capitalize and to monetize, to enhance productivity, to enhance the experience, while maintaining cost or while even decreasing cost, because they no longer had to invest in other vendors to make those outcomes possible. Now, this is what we have deployed so far. But going back to those requirements or to those models that we see today in the oil and gas industry or in the energy industry overall, we do want to move in this direction. And for this, we do require some transformation on the edge and throughout the entire processes of any energy organization. But unfortunately, these, up till this day, they do have their own challenges. Now, for a big network where scale is a big concern, we do look at the edge transformation challenges as having not lacking architectural flexibility, of having the concern of needing to fit with new innovation and integrations. We need to work on meaningful projects to support the outcome-based results that we're looking for. There are many dependencies that we want to break the silos down. We want those dependencies to become automated interdependencies. There's the lack of visibility and security, especially with the explosion of devices estimated by IDC for next year, which is 55 billion connected devices. So again, all the vectors and the surface of attack increasing. And with the lack of visibility and security, this is a big challenge for transformation. Manageability of multiple layers of these devices and the edge solutions, the experience that we're trying to give the users and the employees, the automation that's required. So we want to invest in more data lakes. We want to look at machine learning. We want to look into automation and AI. So how do we do that? The redundancies that we want to eliminate. And of course, the dollar sign that's on everyone's mind. We want to protect our investment. We want to reduce the total cost of ownership. Now, this is where Aruba ASP comes in. And this is where we look at a unified infrastructure to give what it says. We just want to connect. So that's step number one. We don't care about what's there on the Wi-Fi or on the wire anymore. All we care about is connecting regardless of the medium. Then we look into securing what's connected. So that's where zero trust security policy comes in, by establishing visibility and awareness first, and then locking in the security, and then adapting, automating any anomaly or change. And that's where we are protecting the users and the devices, and then looking at the context and data of everything that's connected and that's protected, so that we can analyze and act on it. And that's where the onboarding of new users, the onboarding of new operating companies, the onboarding of new sites comes in, regardless of the architecture. So this can extend from the campus to the data center, to the cloud, to branch offices, and to remote teleworkers. Now, all of this, and answering to the protection on investment and reduction of the TCO, this is where we can offer all of this as a service. So let me explain a bit more so I can give you a better idea. And these are some of the outcomes and challenges that we look to from an infrastructure perspective. We look at business continuity, we look at finding assets, we look at supporting IoT and OT, prioritizing health and safety, seamless roaming, pervasive coverage, zero downtime, and so on. So this is where we look at solutions where we integrate with our vendors, such as touch-free operations, especially in the times of Corona, unified communications, and that's where you find those vendors automatically connecting to our gear, giving you the best quality of service and enhancing operations. And that's just talking about voice communication, voice or video or remote teleworkers communication. And that's where, when we talk about integrating with vendors, the bigger problem arises. There's an IoT and OT problem. Every IoT, OT vendor requires their own infrastructure, their own gateways to talk back to their backend, to talk back to their management platforms. But if you already have an Aruba infrastructure, this can be eliminated. An Aruba access point is now working as an IoT gateway to connect each and every one of these vendors through the AP itself. There's no need anymore to put a dedicated gateway for the OT or IoT sensor. So the price, the investment in this gateway is removed. The civil works required to mount it, to power it, to maintain it is all reduced. And that's where the access point acting as an IoT gateway can support multiple use cases in the energy and oil and gas industry today. I'm just gonna give one example from one of our partners, Extronics, where they have a badge with multiple sensors that blue-collar workers can work, so that we can, and that relates back to the HSE use case, where we can have them press an emergency call button in case of any emergencies, detect any issues, someone falling over, and bearing in mind that this has a ruggedized device design to withstand the conditions of the oil and gas deployments we have in the region, enabled with multiple communication methods to fit in the unified infrastructure architecture that we are giving. Now, that's just one example. I would have definitely, I don't have the time to go over all of our partners and the different use cases that they offer, but this is a subset of some of these partners and the vendors that pertain to different use cases just on the unified infrastructure layer of the Aruba Edge Services platform. Now, you can go onto our websites, arubanetworks.com, look into the partners section and look up any partner you want for any use case that you are looking for, and you can find the deployment solution, how the integration works, and what do you get out of the integration in the published solution overviews. So, the unified infrastructure mandates that we give no headaches for anything that we're proposing. An access point that you can use in any architecture, a switch that you can use in any architecture, connectivity of branches that you can connect across 1, 2, 5, 15, 10, 20, 30 branches or more, while maintaining the security policy. And that's where the single pane of management comes in with Aruba Central, so that you don't have to have multiple management platforms and siloed approaches and different people with different specialties that are trained on our solutions. Now, when we go to security, this is where we're looking at maintaining compliance, where we're maintaining visibility, profiling, and security for all IoT and OT devices, and enforcing dynamic segmentation for choosing how to connect the devices properly and in a secure manner. And that's where a ClearPass comes in. So it could be different use cases from different customers. So we start with visibility for enhanced deep packet inspection, machine learning, and AI-based visibility and fingerprinting. Control, going with ClearPass Policy Manager to do role-based access control for different kinds of users, with compliance through reporting, through network management, and also extending beyond IT to IoT and to OT through integrating with CyberX, Clarity, NGG, and Nozomi networks for visibility on the OT layer networks. Other challenges from the automation side also arise, and that's where we introduced the reduction in the operations and the traditional headaches that administrators have by features such as AI search for natural language processing queries to help any admin find the command or window they're looking for. AI assist that will automatically collect the problem, the logs, the root cause, talk to Aruba TAC, and receive the Aruba TAC response and recommendation before you even raise the phone and call your partner or call the Aruba SE to report a problem. And of course, AI insights that will look at well-known problems on the wired, on the wireless networks, and suggest the fixes before the users even start reporting them. And that's where we complement this. So we also want the user perspective, and that's where Aruba has its own sensors to tell you what's happening from the user perspective, because a user could be on an iPhone, he could be on a ruggedized tablet, he could be on a Samsung, he could be on a laptop, and you would never understand the experience of the user if you don't have someone standing there 24/7 testing the wire, the Wi-Fi, the DHCP, the connectivity, the DNS, the association, Facebook, Dropbox, the internal websites. And this is what our sensor does. It's a mobile user and a wired user that sits there 24/7 on the site and continuously tests the network and tells you what's wrong with the network before you receive the dreaded call of what's wrong with the Wi-Fi, or what's wrong with your internet, or why can't I connect. And then, of course, we go to the financial or the commercial aspect that I talked about, which is a big challenge for transformation today, and which is the budget. Now, these are some of the cases that we are catering to answer through our solution with the ESP architecture, and that's with everything as a service, with Aruba's outcome as a service, so that we can support any customer today with our approach, be it from software as a service, through licensing, through the software on cloud or in on-prem or in the cloud, whether it's also hardware as a service. So any access point, switch, or server today that you can get can be acquired as a network as a service component, turning a CapEx offer into an OpEx offering, with the option to add managed services on top of it. So differentiated services, professional services, planning, design, and configuration from Aruba, global services, high-touch services, and from our partners, in addition to financial services. So today, HPE Financial Services will come in and they will tell you, you're purchasing 1,000 access points. You don't have to pay for them all up front. You can ramp up as you go, or you can pay in monthly installments on a 3 or 5 year or 4-year basis. And guess what? By the end of the 3-year term basis, you can refresh your whole network and keep paying the same fee, a monthly fee, and you will have the new Wi-Fi 6E access points, or the new Wi-Fi 7 access points, or the new switching technology that will come next, or the new ClearPass servers, and so on and so forth. So all of these are different flavors that can be combined to cater for the commercial headaches that we have nowadays, not only in energy and oil and gas, but across all of our customers, because we really need to be wise about where we spend our money today. And that summarizes what we have in answer for connectivity, for security, for automation, and on wrapping it all in the outcome as a service approach that we have for our customers. And this way we have resolved these challenges into our ESP offering through the multiple features that I have talked about. But due to the time limit that we have today in our session, we cannot go in depth in each one of these categories, but we would be happy to answer any of the questions that you have right now or after the session. So I'll just conclude over here due to the time. I don't want to take more of your time, Kartik.
Thank you, Fahmi, for that insightful presentation. I don't think we've got any questions. Your contact information is on the screen. If anybody wants to have if anybody has any follow-up questions with Fahmi, please feel free to reach out to him. Next up, I'd want to introduce our next panel, the Pursuit of Security. It's moderated by Nicholas Jones, who's a Senior Manager, OT Cybersecurity from EY. Over to you, Nick.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for attending today's session, and thanks for the panelists and vendors beforehand. It's been very insightful messages that have been portrayed there. So thank you. As I said, it's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Very excited for the event. As I said, my name is Nicholas Jones. I'm a Senior Manager for EY here in Doha, Qatar. I'm from Wales in the UK, so please stop me if I speak too quickly. I've worked in cybersecurity for over 15 years. Worked in the energy industry since 2008. I've led security programs across Europe in critical national infrastructure and in Azerbaijan, and now here in the Middle East, both OT and IT. I'm an advisor for the International Society of Automation for their security standards, so the 62443 standard. I'm also on the ISA 99 committee for their standards. So over to now for the panel. I'd like you to introduce Mr. Sheikh Abdul Khada.
Yeah, hi, good morning. This is Sheikh Abdul Khada. I have about 25 years of experience. I've been working in this industry for a very long time. I'm a veteran in a lot of aspects. Now, if you look at something unique about me, I have worked as a CISO for a largest bank in Qatar, and then in a telecom, and then now in an oil and gas sector. So having a multifaceted experience in all the industry, particularly having worked in the region and as well as globally in US and Australia and other places, I carry a lot of exposure as well, and to hopefully add value to this discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And next on the list is Faraz. Ahmed. You're on mute if you're, it seems to be a bit of a sound issue there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now. Yep.
Okay, sorry. So good morning. My name is Faraz Ahmed, and I work for a company called NG. NG is a global leader in the energy business operations across the globe in all the geographies. And I'm responsible as the Chief Information Security Officer and the CIO of NG for Middle East, Asia, and Africa region.
Excellent. Next on the list, Shahab Siddiqui, is that how you pronounce it?
Hi everyone, good morning. So Shahab here. I am heading cybersecurity globally for Petrofac. I have around 15 years of experience in cybersecurity. I work at both service provider side as well as in this role at customer end. So I've seen both sides of it. I'm managing IT and OT security for Petrofac. And that's in a brief my introduction. Very happy to be here, and thank you for the organizers to host me today. Thanks, Nick, for moderating it here.
No worries. Thank you very much. Robin, last but not least.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Boutier. I started 15 years ago as a research scientist at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Worked on different technologies around protecting critical infrastructure, such as developing an IDS for smart meters or a modeling technology for complex firewalls, and then decided to branch out of academia, launch Network Perception. We are headquartered in Chicago. We've been working hand in hand with the energy industry and the North American Electrical Reliability Corporation, NERC. And nowadays we are expanding internationally and start to have a good, strong traction in the Middle East.
Thank you very much. So obviously, just to start off with the legal disclaimer, the audience panelists are sharing their personal views and don't represent their company. So I want to get that one out of the way before we start going through the discussion. So the first question we got is for Sheikh. So based on your obviously experience within IT security and your wealth of background on both sides of the fence in IT and OT, can you share your insights, how different IT and OT security is, and what are the key challenges you think are on handling those threats and issues?
Thanks, Nick, for the question. From the security perspective, I think that there is very little difference to IT and OT in terms of threats and vulnerabilities. The biggest difference, probably, in my view, is the impact. The impact in IT generally attributed to information loss, while on OT, impact is attributed to loss of life. While confidentiality, integrity, and availability is the most prominent in IT, OT is other real life or real world hazards like safety, reliability, and privacy. So there are context and then the concept. So in IT context, if you look at it, data, networks, and services are the three dominant context in which we build security, that is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But in the scenario of OT, you have humans, things, physical infrastructure, and environment. So the concepts that really apply to that is privacy, safety and reliability, besides integrity and availability. Or so in order of preference, as you know, we call CIA when it applies to IT, and AIC when it comes to OT. Another bigger factor that differentiates between IT and OT is basically the motivation, which is basically an intangible way of quantifying the risk. So the actual harm, commercial vandalism, and reputation vandalism, and the state actors which are involved in really causing a great disaster to the country or the nation or the state. So the increase in attacks on operation environment causes risk to the environment and to the human life. That should be our worry. So traditionally, if you look at the challenges from the OT, in my view, are, traditionally ICS are self-contained. Communications used to take place over the physical wires and among system components. But if you look at, things have changed. Now you have more, we are talking about convergence, IT and OT convergence, which probably we'll discuss later at the point, is to get the mindset. Mindset is one of the biggest challenge between a traditional ICS who are isolated from data networks, and there was no need to consider device or system security. That's a mindset that most of the OT personnel operate, or even at the management level. Obsolescence, I think Nick, Robin talked in the early in his presentation. Obsolescence is one of the biggest challenge. Lack of IT involvement is also another big challenge when it comes to OT. It may not be applied to my organizations where we are, we have at an organization level we are converged, but many organizations there is a clear segregation between IT and OT. So that's another geographically dispersed challenges, and probably having systems out of the scan scope that Robin again talked about this morning. Vulnerability and patch management and involvement of OEMs is one of the biggest challenge. And last but not the least is the competency. So the competency which the IT has learned over the last 30-40 years of threats coming on the TCP/IP networks is really new to OT. So these are all some of the challenges which I personally see in my environment and also based on my experience. Over to you.
No, it's great points picked up there. And I think one of the other things that you look at, especially with critical national infrastructure, as more and more networks are connected to the internet now, is that they are a geopolitical avenue for attack, if you like, and with the attribution being extremely difficult as well, or easily deniable by state actors or other organizations. It's an attractive avenue to explore. So some great points there. So the next question we got for is Faraz. So what do you think are the key challenges organizations are facing now with implementation of a successful ICS or industrial control system security program?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I think a couple of challenges Sheikh has already covered in his answer. Just to elaborate a few more of them. I think the right skill set related to cybersecurity is one of the key challenges. Historically, OT environment was more focusing on the availability and the operations of the plant to minimize downtime, to minimize health-related or lost time accidents. So those kind of things were more on a priority. On the other hand, the outside world has changed rapidly, and there seemed to be a little bit of a gap between the skill set which is required for cybersecurity and what is currently available on the OT side. So I believe that's one of the biggest challenge I see, that OT in the OT world, lack of cybersecurity skill set. The other bigger challenge when I see from my organization, which is predominantly energy and oil and gas, the critical assets are heavily capex oriented. So if you are building a power plant, for example, it is a multi-billion-dollar asset, And those assets which has been developed a couple of years back, maybe 10 or 15 years back, there's not an opportunity to update them regularly. So there's an obsolescence issue. And we see in our industry, there's a lot of assets which are obsolete. Some of them are running on Windows XP, for example, or Windows 2000 servers. So it's not, from a commercial and from a contractual point of view, it is not so easy in those cases to upgrade and update the systems. So every time you are basically venturing into these type of discussions, it ends up a lot of, I would say, challenges at the board level, where the cost is deemed to be too high. In other cases in the Middle East, there is a specific challenge where these assets are running on a long-term power purchase agreements. So those agreements, if they are very close to their expiry, there is lack of interest from the operators to upgrade their system because they don't want to invest millions of dollars just to keep these systems updated. So that's another challenge. The third, and I would say equally important challenge, is the perception and acceptability of cybersecurity risks at the board level. In many organizations, even now, I believe there is lack of understanding and appreciation of the cybersecurity risks at the board level. And I mean, at NG level, we have realized this risk early stages. 4 or 5 years back. We started working on. They were running some awareness programs at the board level. So we have countered that challenge. But I see in other organizations, it still remains as a big challenge. The acceptance and awareness of cybersecurity as a risk at the board level. So these are some of the key challenges which I see, which are kind of stoppers for a successful ICS cybersecurity program in most of the organizations which I have exposed to.
Yeah, you picked up some good points there, some great points, actually. I think when you look at, I think there's a quote from Robert Mueller, the former FBI director in the US. He said there are two types of companies, ones that have been hacked and ones that are going to be hacked. So, when you put that into perspective, but as you said about whether people actually realize the risk and impact of the company of a cybersecurity attack is something to be questioned. But again, I think it's for us as security leaders to try and articulate that and look at the impact of if the site shut down, what would be the cost of it in terms of financial terms as well as safety aspects. But yeah, you picked up a lot of good points there. So the next question for Faraz. Actually, sorry, it's Shahab. So just going back to the boardroom, actually. So is cybersecurity resilience acceptable in the boardroom versus absolute security?
Yeah, thanks Nick for that question. And see, cyber resiliency and absolute cybersecurity, it's basically a complementary thing. So you will definitely strive for absolute security, but we all know, okay, eventually a highly motivated attacker will end up breaking your defenses, and you may end up getting compromised or breached. And that's where cyber resiliency comes into picture, where you even though you are investing on prevention and protection, you are still acknowledging the fact that one day we might get breached, and then you have whole recovery process and technology available to make sure your key business processes are working while you are recovering from an attack. So board, of course, because of all of these high-profile breaches that are happening, board is aware that okay, you will definitely have a breach, but that doesn't mean that they will tell you, okay, you build a resiliency, but don't go for absolute security. So while we will strive for an absolute security, board also understands, okay, it will happen, and then resiliency is something that is expected as a part of your overall strategy. So I think it's not mutually exclusive, rather than complementary to each other, and that's where even when we go for board presentation, one question is what if we get breached? What could be the worst damage? So, and that's where some of the things are softer, like reputation is something you can, of course, build some resiliency around that, but still it's a damage. So you cannot completely rely on resiliency, because there are certain aspects you have to take care and make sure you don't get breached. Yeah. So in a nutshell, yeah. I hope that answers your question, Nick.
It does, and I think I think a lot of organizations now are realizing that they're moving to that resilience model. So having the quantitative and qualitative analysis to risks that they look at, but also have a defense in depth approach. And I think often we look at security as a quantitative aspect, but if you look at maybe an asset that's producing $30 million a day, you might ask yourself, how much do you spend on security on that asset? So there's conversations definitely to have, but the recognizing that if we are going to be hit, then we've got the right policies, procedures, processes in place to mitigate that damage. I think to take that forward.
Yeah, and also if you see, like today, there are high-profile breaches happening, and the trend also has changed from people like treating as taboo and CISOs getting fired just for a breach. Rather than that, now it's measured how well you handled a breach, how soon you recovered. So that acceptance is there now. In fact, it's carried as a battle scar. So it's something people say that, okay, we have managed a breach. So.
Definitely, and I think that's changed definitely over the last sort of 10 years or so, where people are looking at that resiliency within all organizations. But as you said, the CISO as well gets that headache. So no, that's good. Thank you. So the last one of the first questions for Robin. So, why is cybersecurity visibility such a complex challenge in the energy industry? So I know how much that is a challenge with asset inventory, for example, within the oil and gas realm. But Robin, you might share some of your insights.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for the question. And my fellow panelists have already raised some great points. I'll try to add one more, which is around the, like we mentioned earlier, the asset owners, like the capex and the large infrastructure, the geographically dispersed. I think one thing specific to the energy industry is that you need to rely on a lot of third party to ensure the security of your organization. At least in the US, you have a lot of aggregation, consolidation of the market. So like a given electric utility may be the result of 20, 25 companies that came together. And so that means that you have a lot of different asset owners, asset operators. And so that means in terms of security to be able to manage many, many stakeholders. And that's add to the challenge of achieving resiliency and being able to gain that visibility that you need.
Yeah, and I think as you said, I think as the market starts to mature now, we have a lot of MAC vendors or main automation contractors stepping up to the mark where they're qualifying patches, QPLs, and things like that to push forward. But I think from your perspective, obviously a lot of these networks are dispersed, not on domains and work groups. How would you look at that challenge, and how would you overcome it?
Well, you need to be methodical. There's an investment to be made, and the fact that those questions are now discussed at the board level helps a lot to be able to put the right budget in order to achieve that better visibility. I think really the key starting point is to align all the stakeholders around the same objective. And adopting a risk assessment framework that's standardized and well known is a great way to achieve that alignment. And once you have the alignment plus the budget, that's where you can have a plan over multiple years to deploy the different solutions you need across all those business units in order to get both the detailed visibility as well as the big picture.
Yeah, no, great answer. And I think that you said about alignment and obviously accountability is one thing. I think people often look at security as someone else's responsibility, but obviously we're all responsible for it. But we need to identify those accountable within assets and to help us to drive that program forward. So, no, thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
So, back to Sheikh. So what do you think are the challenges and opportunities on the convergence of OT and IT within cybersecurity?
The idea of IT and OT convergence, in my view, is not new. It is already happening, or eventually will happen at different levels. Probably at an organization level, or is it at a technical level, or at an operational level. So the convergence obviously has several benefits, like less siloed IT and OT departments, reduced cost, probably faster time to market for a converged technology, improved compliance. That's one of the key drivers, at least from the security perspective, and then more efficient energy and probably more effective asset management, because asset management in law of, particularly on the OT side, always is a challenge, because when you have a geographically dispersed and they go to a regular maintenance and you have what, in my case, about 4,000, 5,000 different vendors supplying different equipment. So these are obviously much bigger benefits, but from the cybersecurity perspective, I think it gives a lot of challenges when it comes to convergence. And that is one of the probably deterrent why people have not converged, because of the security issue. And organizations might struggle with reorganizing previously siloed IT and the organizations departments and manage and operate newly converged technologies. So that's the biggest challenge from the process perspective or process compliance. Second biggest would be the securing the IoT implementation, because IoT initiatives are not owned by any one department. Sometimes a business department may own an IoT initiative. When I talk about IoT in the context of industry, it's industrial IoT. So a new project might have to reach all departments, especially in more siloed organizations. Typically, OT departments will have a limited knowledge of security. No offense for the people from OT, but it's because they are quite new to this kind of world, which IT has been handling for the last 3-4 decades. IT has, and training, I think I always emphasize on one aspect, which is the people aspect, which is the training and having a right competency to handle different types of threats, because the landscape for OT is vast. Threat can come from any place, any system. And it is really difficult, unlike IT, which is has centralized management tools, better visibility, better things of managing, and there is a solution for every problem, or probably solution is created first and the problem in IT case, whereas it's not this case with OT. And integration with existing systems. So I can speak on and on, but I think and on a bottom line, yes, there are challenges, but at the same time, the solutions like Sheikh already spoke in terms of defense and that, having a better there may not be a silver bullet when it comes to cybersecurity solution, potentially no way to solve cyber security, but there are strong foundational ideas and principles in which a solid cybersecurity strategy can be built. So that's how I think there'll be a greater solution to work on a seamless IT and OT convergence moving forward in many industries.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think some of the same fundamentals from IT and OT do transcend. So the people, process, and technology aspect of it, as well as having that governance foundation and your policies and procedures. But obviously the delicate situation with the OT is, and sometimes guys coming across from the IT side of the fence, when they look at, oh, we'll just patch this system, or we'll just upgrade this switch, and obviously that can't happen as smoothly in the OT environment. So obviously you have to put some compensating controls on that and have a lot of conversations and with stakeholders on both sides of the fence to implement that as well. So
very well said. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of what I spoke.
Yeah, perfect. So next is Faraz. So what do you think the importance of user awareness? I know Sheikh talked about user awareness there. So what do you think is the importance of user awareness within OT? And have you got any recommendations or insights for our participants?
Yeah, thank you. I think we all know that in the last couple of years, there has been significant advancement in the cybersecurity solutions. So be it UTM technology or EDR technology, or even the vulnerability assessment or patch management. So there has been a lot of development in that. So organizations have invested in enhancing and ring fencing their offices and their OT environments. But when it comes to the human factor, for cyber criminals, while we see that it is becoming relatively harder for the cyber criminals to penetrate into the networks, because they have been reinforced now because of these technologies which I just mentioned. They see it as an opportunity to penetrate through the human factor. So the importance of awareness is paramount, because if your users and your employees are aware about those type of attacks which are happening, and those tricks and techniques which the cyber criminals are using, it becomes really difficult for the criminals to penetrate. So that's really, it's a no-brainer that we organizations should invest in that. I just go through quick some statistics which I saw the other day. There has been 61% increase of the companies who have suffered cyber attacks last year. So you can imagine. And one of the statistics I was seeing, only the ransomware attacks, only the last year cyber crimes have increased. Overall, 600% increased last year because of this pandemic, and users and employees were working from remotely from the office, and that was a very good opportunity for cyber criminals to attack. There's been 600% increase in that. Also, we all considered Mac OS as the completely, I would say, immune system for OS for malwares, but we have seen in the last 2 years that there has been significant increase, and one of the statistics says that there has been 165% increase in the OS of Mac. So Mac OS has been targeted, and that has been increased. And so you can imagine that these cyber criminals have changed their focus. It's now more on the user side as compared to the infrastructure side. So that's the main important part where the organization needs to focus on to increase awareness. In NG, we are focusing a lot on this. We organize cyber training sessions on a regular basis for our employees at all levels of the organization, and it includes the ExCom, the executive management. And as I said in my previous answer, that I firmly believe that it's the tone at the top. So if the top level executive team is not aware about the cybersecurity, then it becomes much more difficult to cascade this message down to the lower levels of the organization. So I think organizations should also focus on awareness of the top level, and then that will cascade down easily to the lower levels.
Absolutely, yeah, some great points there. And I think, within the energy industry, it's quite easy to have that relationship between safety and security, because obviously I think actually within multiple languages it's the same word, but having that correlation between the both within the energy industry is important. And I think it's great to see that you're pushing forward that awareness campaign. It's all that first step is getting it out there, then it's compliance focused, and then eventually getting some metrics in place and getting the end users tested to see how we measure up to that I think is really important as well on a long-term sustainment path anyway.
Absolutely.
Thank you for those valuable insights. So we got Shahab next on third-party related attacks. So we know these are on the rise. So how would you suggest we manage these risks?
Yeah, so as Sarfraz was mentioning, I mean, attackers will exploit the weakest link, and in some cases it will be your own users, and then if not, then third parties who probably do not have same level of controls that you have. However, it's a topic like which is like pretty well understood, but problem is if you have limited number of third parties, then probably you can do assessment. But I think the real problem arises when you have huge number of third parties, and then to do manually assess them becomes really tricky. And I think I would share what we are doing. Some of the strategies that we have taken is prioritized these third parties into various bucket, or mainly 3 bucket. Someone who is basically not having much interaction in terms of data, network, or credential with the organization. Another one is someone who actually have access to your data, but may not be confidential data. And then the last one is where they actually are connected to your network, and they have access to sensitive PII data or confidential data. And based on that, then you prioritize. But you also have to understand all these vendors are also at various level of maturity. And the biggest problem today we have is we do risk identification with these assessment. However, the mitigation of risk doesn't happen or is not well managed, because we have so many vendors, and then you identify the risk and then it goes into mitigation. So I think we need to work with the vendors to fix that. However, also at the same time, understand that possibly some of the controls the vendor will not be able to implement. And then I think you have to implement those compensatory control at your end in some cases, because no matter what they say, sometimes you cannot get that visibility. It's all what vendor projects you. Even if you do certain assessment, even if you utilize third parties to do assessment. And another challenge is this, even for the third parties, it is very cumbersome. Like every other customer asks for an audit. So I think the repeatability of these assessment is another area. And I feel some of the new solutions or solutions which are there already in market, like BitSight or Security Scorecard, which are giving you scoring of a vendor, should be a good start to at least maintain a basic hygiene for a good number of vendors. And you tell them, okay, at minimum, you have to maintain this score. So that way you can get some assurance that, okay, at least the vendor is practicing basic hygiene. And then I think you need to handhold your vendors, involve them in your awareness and training program, make sure they are partner with you, I think. And also at the same time realize the fact that they may not have the same resources or same level of skill set available, because some of these companies are into different function, and cybersecurity might not be their key priority, right? However, they can still end up with. So I think we need to do a lot of handholding, make sure these assessment are repeatable or reused by possibly other companies. So there is less burden on the vendor itself, and probably utilize scoring mechanism where it's a bit easier to at least get a basic hygiene for multiple vendors together. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that topic.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I really like that tiered approach. I think we've used it on a couple of aspects for some companies I worked with. So having that tiered approach, looking at what is the criticality of the service they're offering. Have they got health data? Is it on an automation system, on a safety network? What functions is it controlling? So it's really good. And I think you mentioned a good point there about hand-holding and collaboration with vendors. And we're all in this together to make it more secure. So rather than an us versus them dimension, that collaboration I think is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think somewhere we need to treat them like our own users, that we train them on security awareness. I think that's the category we should put them on, and then try to make them aware and handle them. Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, so next question for Robin. Is it possible for an OT environment to become cyber resilient?
Thanks, Nick, for the question. Before I actually go to it, just one point on the cyber hygiene and the third party. In addition to the scorecard for vendors, we've seen some traction around the software bill of material, the SBOM, and it's equivalent of having the list of ingredients in the product before buying it. And I think that will also play a major role in building the trust and making sure that when you buy a piece of software, you know at least some libraries inside, so that in cases of vulnerability you can mitigate it better. Now to the question of OT environment and cyber resiliency, yes, absolutely. And actually, I think the OT environment, as we said earlier, with the safety aspect, brings some advantages for the defender. The fact that you have this relationship between your equipment and then physical consequences, you have the laws of physics on your side. That means that if something is starting to not go according to plan, you can detect it with better accuracy than in the IT environment, where millions of protocols and applications can be allowed. It will be pretty difficult to differentiate what's malicious from non-malicious. The key question around resiliency for me is really to understand what are the bedrock principles, what are the different concepts to deploy and implement at the different levels of your environment. NIST has a great framework around those resiliency principles. And if I take example as well from the electric utility industry, where the people are familiar with the N-1 principle, where if you have a system with N components, you remove any one of those, and the system needs to keep working, at least on the electric aspect of it. Applying that type of N-1 for the cyber side, where if you lose an asset, a cyber asset, then you still have that capacity to operate, and you don't all depend on a single point of failure.
Yeah, no, that's great. Those single point of failures are really, really imperative within these sorts of networks. So thanks there, Robin. I won't speak too much because I know we've got 15 minutes left, and I've got a few questions to go through for everyone. So next one for Sheikh. What solutions would you advise to make the entire ecosystem more secure from an IT and OT aspect?
Before I answer this question, I would like to comment on what Shahab had mentioned. In terms of what we do, I think we adopt similar strategy or approach what Shahab had mentioned in terms of creating the vendors or the supply chain into a three important bucket. And what we additionally also do is to validate, and we start right from that level one in terms of documentation, having a contracts, NDAs, TPAs, wherever, PII information. So we ensure that there's a data processing agreement already signed if it is applicable to that particular vendor. Second level, what we also do is a self-assessment on an online SharePoint portal in terms of all the security policies which they have to. So this is a every year exercise. So this is a very minimal intervention from us. So created a SharePoint portal with a questionnaire so that it's a self-paced and self-assessment which each vendor can do. And based on that information on the level 3 is to using our right to audit clause, we also do some kind of an audit and rely on any third-party audit reports that they would, of course, sanitized version of it, which is applicable to us. So these are some of the things that I'd like to add to what Shahab mentioned, because that's a very, very important subject that everybody needs to. So now I move to your in terms of what you had. And I always, and I'll probably a little bit of repetitive what I had mentioned earlier. So there is no silver bullet when it comes to creating. So it's only the strong foundational ideas and principles which will build this, solid cybersecurity strategy. Building layers of defense and being strategic, deliberate, and intentional with the purpose of every layer, I think will make it effective. So that an effective cybersecurity is the one that everybody has to aim for, not a perfect cybersecurity. So the improvement is the key that everybody should look at. So in terms of just as an advice and based on my experience, there is no order in terms of what technical controls or operation level that are really important, but everything is important when it comes to, and there is no order of implementation, because when it comes to specific risks that an organization is facing, so it becomes the important for them. But to start with, I think asset management is the key to have a complete control of the assets, having an inventory established, secure, and second most important, which based on my experience, to have a secure configuration, having a minimum baseline for every type of device that is being introduced, so that the vendor knows that these are our standards and these are the things that they need to implement. So we start security by design, privacy by design in mind, and those kind of checklists will really help to even a project manager to sign off and submit us to this, to every secure configuration that is being introduced. Third probably will be network segmentation. So micro segmentation, whether you call it, to prevent east-west traffic, try to more have it not sound, having it layered, whether it comes from the IT or the using a Purdue level to the level down, where level 0 where you have physical, layer 1 is your protection layer, probably layer 2 is your automation, and layer 3 is an access and SCADA layer, and then finally the perimeter. So going from 0 to level 5 is a very important ground up way of segmenting wherever it's possible. Backup and restore in context of the several attacks that have happened in the past. Some are well spoken about and some are not. Backup and restore has played a really important role when it comes to recovery of this. Vulnerability and patch management is another area that could be, and monitoring and incident response is another area. But I can speak more about portable devices and log and on and on. But in my view, I think if we do this simple basic things that we have been doing in IT, and OT is better, probably is better secure, and will be able to move to the next level of industrial automation or the industry 4.0.
Absolutely, and I think hardening is one aspect you picked up there, and it's often overlooked. Trying to reduce that attack surface is really imperative within that OT environment as well. So thank you for those insights. Very good. Faraz, the next question is for you, and it's COVID, so we can't do a webinar without talking about COVID. So what is the impact of the current COVID situation has on cybersecurity and the organization?
Okay, thank you. So due to limited time, I will not cover the whole aspect of both IT and OT. I will be very specific on OT, what has been the impact on the OT, cybersecurity of OT from in the context of COVID. So in the energy business, as I said, the critical infrastructures are such design that the facility is generally on the remote site. So people, normally the operations team, they go to the site or they live there on the site. And when there are some outages or shutdowns, they bring in some teams from the OEM, from the service providers, and then they basically they do a physical activity there to perform those outages. And this is a cycle, or this is a way of working for several years now. What has been really greatly impacted because of COVID is that those plants, and I'm talking about my experience because we have several power plant assets in the region, and where we planned, for example, outages last year, and we were not able to bring in people, the OEM from those companies, likes of Siemens or GE or Alstom, people from outside to work on the plants for those outages, which has been planned several weeks and months ago. So that's one of the aspects where we were not able to bring in, and in the consequence of that, the assets, our power plant assets, had to provide them remote access, those engineers or those experts to provide them remote access. And as we all know, I mean, these conventional type of power plants are not geared adequately for that type of remote access. Even most of the plants have no internet connectivity for the OT environment. So it really caused us a real challenge, how to securely provide access remotely to those sites so that the outages can continue, which is fundamentally important for the operations of the plant. If we are not able to perform that outage in a certain month, then it affects the life of the plant. So that was even very important. So that was one of the most important challenge which we have faced. Apart from that, I think the way the market is moving towards, we are seeing that trend in the Middle East also. The market will in the future move towards more centralized operations. So the concept of merchant market, which is very in the energy business, which is very common in the Western world, in Europe, and even in North America. The energy business is very much merchandise. So you can buy power from electricity from different operators, different providers, which is not the case right now. But the market is moving towards that concept, and I'm expecting that new concept of centralized generation and centralized power trading will bring some new challenges to the OT. And then I think remote connectivity will become as a fundamental requirement of these OT assets, which I see is a big challenge right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned there about remote access, and I think the International Society of Automation, the 62443 standard, recognizes remote access to automation systems as a high-risk activity. Yet when we've got some of these systems that are obsolete and haven't got the correct compensating controls or any controls around them, then the risk is great then to the organization. So yeah, thanks for those points. So Sharab, next question for you, which, Robin, the last question for you. Any lessons learned from the energy sector from the recent high profile attacks?
Sure, thanks. And I'll be brief. I think for me, the main two lessons of maybe we can, wake up calls for many organizations have been, number one, raising the bar in terms of cyber hygiene. I think many organizations before thought they could, fly under the radar or delay investment in terms of cybersecurity, and the high-profile attacks have shown that that's not the case. Everyone can be a victim, and so in the U.S. with the current administration, we've seen a couple of executive orders to raise that cyber hygiene, at least in the government agencies, with making sure two-factor authentication is used everywhere, and a plethora of other like basic controls that people haven't adopted in mass. And then the second lesson is around the threat of supply chain, and that realization that the software that we're purchasing and that we are deploying, we can no longer put all our eggs in the same basket. And that means that if you rely on the same piece of software for managing your entire infrastructure, then when that software becomes compromised, you lose everything. So you need to apply a separation of duties and have clear access based on a need-to-know basis, and really have multiple solutions in case of one of your vendors become compromised.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's funny when you have these sort of high profile attacks, it's almost like for the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a focus on cyber, then some companies might forget about it, and then it starts kicking off again. So it's important, as you said, to recognize that it's never ending. It's a journey, and that we need to look at various facets, including single points of accountability. So no, some good points, and single points of failure. So Sharab, a question for you. What do you see as the biggest challenges within Industrial 4.0 revolution?
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have left, but
we got 3 minutes.
Yeah, so Industry 4.0, before I answer about the challenges, I think it has become more of a buzzword and you hear it everywhere. There's a lot of hype around it. However, I mean, if you can just go back and understand what Industry 4.0 is. So the first revolution basically started when the steam engines were created, and the machine basically replaced some of the tasks our ancestors were doing. And the second one came with electricity, mass production. And the third revolution, like most of the assets today that we are trying to secure, we all hear, is where you have computer-based systems, Khada, ICS. So coming to the fourth revolution or Industry 4.0, it's basically a vision where you have a computer system, which is like cyber physical system. I mean, that's where the concept actually came from, which was later coined to Industry 4.0. And then that system is able to interact with different system. It can take physical readings. It can interact with sensor. It can take decision based on machine learning algorithm, AI. Plus, it can help humans and collaborate with humans. It has interface to collaborate with human, and overall makes a very efficient manufacturing process. So it's more or less a vision, and maybe we all have some element of it. It's already happening. The convergence is a part of it. The connectivity to internet based systems or IoT is connecting to internet is a part of it. And I think without going into much detail, because most of the challenges that we today faced with convergence or IT OT will be very relevant for Industrial 4.0. But the biggest challenge I think it poses is it expands the attack surface basically. And I think that's the key thing to look for. And especially in an industry where visibility is already an issue, like in the OT part, as well as there is a huge skill set gap, which both Sheikh and Faraz talked about. Asset management is an issue. So these challenges stay. And I think the biggest one is skill set gap for Industry 4.0 because now you have a machine learning algorithm system interacting with so many things. And there's a great increase in attack surface because of the connectivity. So yeah, because I know I am cognizant of the fact that we've reached the end of the session. So thank you.
No, definitely. And I think that's skill set gaps. I was reading a report the other day, I think in the US, that was saying that the cybersecurity is going to increase by 31%, so the number of people needed within that industry by 2029, I think it was. And yeah, we've already got a challenge, as we all know, in recruiting the right skill sets for the right roles. So, good point on that. And yeah, that concludes our session. Bang on 10:45 here in Doha. So thanks everyone for your input and your insights. It's been very good to share those. And Karen, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Robin, Sheikh, Sahab, and Faraz. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a discussion on the convergence between IT and OT, which is going to be moderated by Mr. Hani Bani, the head of cybersecurity operations from Dubai's leading oil company. Over to you, Hani.
Thank you, Karan. Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to our second cybersecurity panel discussion. Today we'll be discussing the topic of IT-OT environments, convergence and protection. Information technology and operational technology have been alongside existed in their separate spheres. Each had its own networks, objectives, requirements until recently. That separation is to be converged. Nowadays, with the latest technology trends, with the fourth industrial revolution, the consolidation of activities, IT-OT convergence come to life, where we'll be looking for certain benefits, such as simplification and optimization of processes, controls, gain real-time visibility, and eliminating unplanned downtimes. Yet the controversial discussion of the security aspects is the convergence itself. Our panel today will be focusing on the points of preventing the risks of breaches and attacks when integrating the IT and OT systems. What would be required for the IT-OT convergence, and what is the future of that convergence? Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists. And in case you have any question, please feel free to type it in the chat box. Now, we'll leave the floor for the panelists to introduce themselves. Malik.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I'm Malik Abu Tayyeh, working for Environmental Business Services, Suez. I'm in charge for the IT and OT cybersecurity for our industrial control system.
Thank you, Malik. Nick, over to you.
Yep, I'll introduce myself again in case anyone missed the first session. So my name is Nicholas Jones. I'm a senior manager here at EY in Doha, Qatar, looking at cybersecurity. I'm from Wales in the UK. I've worked in cybersecurity for over 15 years. Worked in the energy industry since 2008. I've led cybersecurity programs across critical national infrastructure across Europe, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and now in the Middle East, both IT and OT. I'm an advisor for the ISA 62443 standard. I'm on the ISA 99 committee for standards.
Thank you, Nick, and welcome both of you gentlemen to our panel. It's a pleasure to having you. I'll start with my first question to Malik. Please, can you advise how can we reduce the risk through the efficient asset management and the inventory, and how we can achieve it in OT?
Yeah, thank you. As our previous panelists, they were discussing about the touch point about the asset and the management of the asset within the ICS network. Of course, the golden rule that we cannot protect what we don't see. So we need to ensure that we have proper asset visibility and we have a complete asset inventory for our network. Of course, that to know yourself better than your adversaries is a critical to have an active defense and to manage your risk. Having that said, of course, that visibility and a proper up-to-date asset inventory is a key to provide the right protection to your network. So again, coming to the first phrase that what we don't see, we cannot protect. So we need to have a solid understanding of our assets within our network and to ensure that we can develop and implement a plan to manage and to mitigate those risks that we are seeing today in our environment. Risks are increasing tremendously toward the ICS network. So asset identification is always concerned for the ICS cybersecurity professionals of how to need to manage those assets, how we need to protect them, and so on. So complete visibility is a key word here, okay? And usually the foundation to have a proper and effective cybersecurity program. So when we need to build a cybersecurity program, the first step that we need to do is to have asset identification. Why we do that? Because it's the key input for many other activities and the process within our program. For example, like business impact analysis, risk assessment, vulnerability assessment, threat identification, and so on. So we need to have complete asset inventory, visibility, so we can have a successful program for our ICS cybersecurity program. Having incomplete asset inventory, of course, that will lead to incomplete further processes that I have mentioned earlier. So we need to make sure that it's complete, proper, up-to-date, and well managed. Whether it will be manual or automated depends on the way, the maturity of the organization, how they manage their assets. So it's something key, and we need to make sure that we tackle that in a proper way. So, of course, when we talk about assets, we're talking about hardware, software, firmware, even we consider the human as an asset today. Because having the right skill set, having the right people within the organization is an asset. And we know today that one of the highest risks, I can say, within the ICS, sometimes if completely separated, is the internal employees and our internal team. So human asset is also key, and we need to know how we can manage those assets and how we need to ensure that the risk imposed by those assets, it will managed and will tackled within our environment. Of course, that having the asset inventory is something great, but still we need to scale those assets and to categorize them based on the criticality, sensitivity, the value of the asset, and so on. So it's a different process that we need to follow and to ensure that it's well managed within the organization.
Thank you, Malik. Yes, indeed, you're right. Having the proper asset inventory is a profound step in building your realization your cybersecurity program. I completely agree with you. Now, I'll move to Nick. Nick, can you please help me with the understanding? What do you think about the OT security? That it is in fact sometimes less mature than the IT. What do you think about it? Is this statement right?
I think it depends. Like everything, it's in the context. But I think if you look at the exposure to the internet from OT, obviously they have got less devices exposed to the internet. That obviously that is changing. So therefore, you have less attacks because you've got less of an attack surface. I think when I started within cybersecurity, it was a bit of a niche, and then when I was in OT security, it was a niche within a niche. I'm not sure that's right anymore. That potentially is changing. But as I said, once we go through this digital transformation with the lots that companies are going through, IoT, industrial IoT for sure, these things are increasing that attack surface on the OT environment. So in terms of their maturity, yes, it is much more difficult to implement controls on potentially legacy systems or systems that normally haven't been connected to the internet. But I think we have got some good news on that journey. We've got lots of vendors now stepping up to that mark, helping these systems get patched or removing the obsolescence hurdle. Yeah, as I said in the last statement, there are lots of main automation contractors or vendors now are stepping up with qualified patch lists every month. There's lots of hardening guides now that you can implement within OT. So I would probably say it's less mature as an IT in general, in my personal opinion. But we are getting there. There are definitely good news stories coming out from an OT environment, and I'm sure there'll be more to follow in the near future.
Completely, I agree with you, Nick. Thank you for your answer. But I don't know. I have more clarification or elaboration if you can help me with. Don't you think that the OT vendors or the ICS vendors should take bigger than baby steps in maturing their technologies? Because some systems are legacy and maybe tens of years not being updated, patched, modified, just been there doing their job without even taking proper IT or security care of them. What do you think?
Absolutely, and I think you'll always have those vendors that will go down that route, and then you can make an informed decision if you want to use those vendors in the future for your assets, isn't it? But I think a lot of the main ones now are getting on that bandwagon, if you like, within automation security and are moving forward. But you're right. I think some vendors don't have that obsolescence plan, and I think when you're initially doing that engagement, I think some of those questions are the important questions to ask. To say, we know that Windows has got a 5-year, maybe a little bit longer now lifespan. What is your strategy on obsolescence, and how are we going to keep that updated? So I think it's you're right. I think people are needing to get onto that bandwagon, but I think it's getting a lot better than it was, say, 5 years ago, for example.
Great. Thank you for your insight, Nicholas. Appreciate it. Now I'll move back to Malik. I have more question, maybe more related to the framework. What do you think, Malik? Does the right choice of the industrial cybersecurity framework playing a significant role in the overall protection?
Yes, sure. Of course, that the question always, which one we have to go with? We have many frameworks, we have many standards. Some are coming from the international, some coming from the national, some coming from the business industry specific standards, and some coming from your own local organization cybersecurity requirements. So which one we need to choose, and how maybe we can blend them all together and take the best from those standards or frameworks. So it's a question always in the industry. But how we need to address this question, how we need to choose the right framework that fit for our organization. I think it's like to choose between those multiple standards and regulation where they are overlapping. So in many controls, you can find within the same standards, the same frameworks, the same controls. But how we need to take the best and what is the fit for our organization, which is very important. I need to see based on our use cases, based on our projects, and based on our industry, how we need to take this framework and how to adapt and customize it accordingly. The other point which is very important about the national standards do we need to comply with or not? So we have to go back to our contract and our contractual obligation in terms of contract. Do we need to comply with maybe international standard or local standard? And from there, we can take it. So assuming that we have to comply with the national standard, okay, great. That should be foreseen from day one. And we have to work with the system integrator saying that we need to comply during the design with this standard. Please make sure that we need to be compliant by the time we go into operation. Of course, not compliance also an issue today, especially we see that our market become more mature in terms of regulation and standards. And in many cases for critical infrastructure, we are obliged to comply for those standards, and non-compliance, it might lead to severe fines. It might lead to that we will seize the operating license from working with this client. So it's very important to mix and match, I can say. So, and it depends, of course, also on the maturity of your company. So if you are less mature, so better that to take something ready, made standard like ISA 62443 and trying to adapt with it rather than try to develop your own. So it depends on the maturity of the organization, it depends on the industry, and depends on the project itself. Of course, again, the bottom line, the compliance and the contractual obligation when we go to our contracts and what we need to do.
Thank you, Malik. And I also have a point to add here. I don't know if you agree with me or not. The compliance to the frameworks or to the regulatory requirements hugely depends on the manpower caliber. So we need to ensure that we have the proper caliber of our human capital to ensure it's not going only as a checklist, but we have also the real need of the controls being implemented. What do you think? Don't you agree with me?
I completely agree. Again, having the framework or being, let's say, ISO 27001 certificate, that doesn't mean that you are secure. So it's not about certificate. It's not about just being with a checklist and getting the validation or the audit from that you are already okay and there's no non-conformities, your switch is fine. You need to take it as a culture. Okay, having the cybersecurity as a culture in your organization is something key. And even if there's no obligation to be compliant, by default, you will be compliant, by taking the best practices and adapt all those controls coming within the standard. It allows you to be compliant and you'll be ready for compliance check by the auditor or by the regulator and so on.
Thank you, Malik. I love the word culture. You nailed it down. Thank you. Now I'll move again back to Nick. Nick, what do you think that cybersecurity can be a harder topic to sell in the boardroom, especially for OT?
I'll come back to that in a second. I just wanted to point out just to add to what Malik says, and you totally agree with him on the culture aspect as well. But and also I think I'm a firm believer in compliance about being that first step, not the last step. So people often think that, oh, we're complying to this standard, we're done, that's it. But it's not. It's that first step. And I think we've seen it within Europe on the NIS and GDPR directive. It does put it on the table and use it as an enabler to people to start moving forward with security. But as we've all said, it's certainly not the last step. It's something to step up to initially. So no, some good points. But yeah, going back to that question about how cybersecurity can be a hard sell in the boardroom, especially with an OT perspective. I think it's a difficult one because how we measured success traditionally was nothing happened. We didn't get hacked, so that means we're successful. And I think that's a much harder and harder sell these days to ask for more money just for nothing to happen. So I think as security leaders, we really need to look at that risk measurement and articulation of the threat, because we know it's a pretty subjective subject. We can look at it with critical quantitative and qualitative analysis, but it's also looking at the monetary aspect of the business. So as I said in the last seminar, if you've got an asset that's producing $30 million a day, how much do we spend on that, protecting it? What are the threats that they impact that, but also the impact on safety, which we know is paramount. But I think we should be using security as an enabler as well, as a business enabler. So I know we've all talked about asset inventory as being a really hard subject to nail down. But if you look at asset inventory, if you have a firm hold on your assets, what does that do? It effectively reduces your costs, because you know what you're maintaining. You've got predictive maintenance, and you can manage that, and effectively is going to impact the business bottom line. So those things are really integral, I think, to having that conversation in the boardroom. And also, likewise with this, everyone's talking about digital transformation. So having that agility to manage your assets and the ability to save cost is also paramount. So those conversations are really imperative. But I would say the last but not least is having someone who's representing security in the boardroom. I think sometimes we've been guilty of maybe being looked upon as geeks or nerds within the business, and not being able to articulate that risk to the boardroom. So I think that's really important.
Thank you, Nick. I completely agree with you. Also, there is one point that I would like to highlight that you just mentioned. And personally, I'm very sensitive to this point, which is we are not hacked, so we're good. We can assume that we are in good shape of security. But efficiently speaking of the security aspect, in certain situations, certain organizations, they will not know that they have been even infiltrated. Absolutely. Or they have already the hackers waiting for a specific event or something to trigger his attack. So the security leaders at that organization or the business, they assume they're in good shape. But in the matter of fact, they have already been infiltrated. What do you think?
Absolutely, and it's important to have that your analysis and view on your infrastructure. And I think you can look at some of these aspects as well. If you can compare it back to safety as leading indicators. So if you've got a number of near misses within cyber, and then you have a big incident, those can be correlated to those leading indicators into that incident. So yeah, no, it's really important to have that analysis and have that view, as we said.
Thank
yes,
you.
Would like to add for the point of this question.
To give you the question again, yeah. Please. Go ahead, Malik, please.
Yeah, today we are acting as a risk advisor to the board. Okay, so we are responsible, but they are accountable. So they need to understand that if something goes wrong, they will be questioned for what could be the consequences of this attack. And as we said just right now, that we've been working for like 20 years and we are okay. Why we need to invest now in this cybersecurity, which was not the case before? Actually, we can simply ask the question to them that the cost of investing in cybersecurity, how much would be if we need to compare it with the cost if we really get attacked, and what will be the consequences of this attack? So of course, it will be very few percentage when we compare it between the attack and the consequences of this attack. I mean, by protection it from this attack. So it's always a discussion and debate between us and the management for them to understand the cyber risk, to understand what could be the worst case scenario if we are under attack, and how they need to mitigate and to support us also in terms of resource, in terms of budget, and in terms of planning to make sure that we are secure.
Thank you very much, Malik. Also, I would like to touch a point here, and I believe also as security professionals, as security leaders, we should also try to explain to the board members, to the senior management, that the attacks are getting more sophisticated in nature and that the threat landscape is changing drastically. So I believe it's part of our responsibility to convey this message to him, to the management, so we can get more investment in security. Do you agree with me?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And as you talked about, if we look at 20 years ago, we were doing business a lot different, lots of manual processes and paper, but now obviously everything's digitalized, and yeah, it's important to protect that infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Nick. Malik, any insights from your side?
Yeah, same. I fully agree about that they need to be on the central agenda, not just only something that they need to go through it once a year. So it's something to be discussed. Today, cyber risk is one of the top 5 risks identified globally. So yes, they need to properly manage and take care of those kind of risks coming from the cyber part.
Thank you very much, Malik. I move to next question also to you, Malik. For industrial cyber security, and IT/OT convergence topic. How much is enough? When do we stop?
It's never enough. This is the, I can say it's never enough. It's iterative process, okay? So we can't say that again, today we are, okay, we have done, let's say, firewalling, segmentation, IDS, okay, we are okay. No, it's actually, it's a culture, okay? We need to have a proper cybersecurity roadmap. And it's not only about technology from the shelf. It's not something that we go to the market, we buy, we plug, and okay, we are okay. It's completely not that. So it's a culture and this iterative process that we need to follow and then to monitor. And wherever we see that the area of improvement, we should take it and we should improve. So it's not something one-way direction where we go and follow. So here we are talking about the approach of plan, do, check, and act, okay? We have to plan, to have proper planning for what we need to do. We have to have proper roadmap for where we are today and where we have to go by having a gap assessment and to see our gaps that we have today and how we need to breach those gaps, okay, and to close them by the time we do implementation for, let's say, technology or maybe process part, and sometimes people. So it's a combination of people, process, and technology. It's not only technology. Many people, they think that, okay, we go and we buy this product and we are okay. And then we go for a second product and so on. It's completely not that. It's a complete defense and depth approach. It's a complete iterative process that we need to follow and to respect during the short-term or long-term cybersecurity program.
Thank you very much, Malik. Appreciate the answer. And I'll move to my last question to Nick, and about his thoughts about what changes would be happening in the IT/OT convergence space or the IT/OT security in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think what I would like to see, yeah, well, I'll hark back of when I first started within IT security. So when I first started in IT security 15, 20 years back, and getting old now, I can't pinpoint the actual year, but looking at security, you would be a server admin or you would be a network administrator, and maybe 5 to 10% of your time would be security. It wasn't a really commoditized activity that you would be in the workplace. But now, you can look at security, and there's probably about 20 different roles you can do in pure security, if you like, from SOC analysts to pen testers to risk analysts to risk managers. So if you look at OT security and where that sits, we've still got the instrument and control guys doing their day job, but obviously doing security on the side. So I think as the industry evolves, I would like more dedicated people within that space, within the OT security side of the fence, to really take that, some of that ownership and responsibility in making that environment much more secure. So I'd like to see more diversity within that role, and more diversity of thought as well within that role. So people from all walks of life and all different domains really focusing on how we can make that industry and our industry much more secure as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'll move now to Karan to see if there is any questions from the audience. Karan, anything from your side?
Oh, Hani, we don't have any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Karan. Now I'll move back to our panelists to understand if they have a takeaway note or recommendations for the IT/OT convergence and protection.
Yeah, for me, I would like to add that on top of what Nick mentioned, that today we have lack of resources in terms of OT cybersecurity who are well understanding the needs we have in this domain. So I recommend those who are with us within this discussion, the attendees, that if they have a thought about where he should go, I do highly recommend to go to OT cybersecurity and try to take this road toward this career, which will be very attractive for the coming years due to the lack of resources.
Thank you, Malik. Over to you, Nick.
Absolutely, and that's why I've gone into OT security really is to make a difference, to make a difference to our critical national infrastructure, and hopefully make the world a more secure place as we go forward.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really enjoyed the conversation and discussion with you. It was a blast for me. And I believe we need to keep such discussions rolling and rolling, because this is what is keeping our industry moving ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today, and we'll be looking forward to see you again in our next event. Have a fantastic day. Over to you, Karan.
Thank you so much, Hani. Thank you so much, Nick and Malik. It was a very nice discussion, very great discussion what we had. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, for participating. Our next edition for the 4th Cyber Warriors Conclave is going to be on December 7th and 8th. We will share the details with you soon. And also the recording of this session will be shared to everyone by early next week.
Thank you, Karan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.